Ladies and gentlemen, the way we carry ourselves in public speaks volumes long before we ever open our mouths. Every gesture, every word, every small act sends a message about who we are and what we stand for. Today, we're going to explore the subtle but powerful habits that can either elevate your presence or quietly erode your respect. The things you should never do in public if you want to command dignity, influence, and trust. Not everything deserves it. Let's talk about something that seems almost trivial on the surface, but in reality, it's one of the clearest indicators of your internal strength or weakness, the way you handle public disagreements. You've seen it before. Two people standing in the middle of a street, in a restaurant, maybe in line at the grocery store, and voices start to rise. It begins as a disagreement, but quickly spirals into a loud, public argument. Words become weapons, faces contort, and the energy shifts. Suddenly, everyone around is drawn into their emotional theater, whether they like it or not. And here's the truth. In that moment, they've lost more than the argument. They've lost control of their dignity. See, when you raise your voice in public out of anger, you're not just communicating your frustration. You're revealing your inability to regulate yourself under pressure. And people notice that. In fact, not everyone deserves a seat. They notice it far more than the actual content of what you're saying. You might think you're proving a point, but what you're really proving is that your emotional thermostat is set by whoever provokes you. That's not strength. That's weakness disguised as passion. A seat. Self-control is not about suppressing your emotions. It's about directing them with precision. The moment you allow anger to dictate your volume and your words, you've handed over the steering wheel to the very thing you should be mastering. And in public, the consequences of that surrender are magnified. Strangers are not neutral observers. They are constantly evaluating, consciously or subconsciously, whether you're the type of person they'd respect, trust, or follow. Loud, aggressive outbursts make the answer to that question a resounding no. There's also a deeper, almost philosophical dimension here. Public spaces operate on a fragile social contract, an unspoken agreement that we'll each behave in a way that keeps the shared environment safe, functional, and bearable. When you erupt in public, you're tearing at the fabric of that contract. You're demanding that the space revolve around your emotions in that moment. And that's a form of arrogance, the belief that your current frustration outweighs everyone else's right to peace. But let's go even deeper. There's a psychological reality that every time you engage in a loud, aggressive argument, you're reinforcing a neural pattern. You're teaching your brain that when confronted, escalation is the default. Over time, this becomes a habit, and habits have a way of rewriting your identity. People who argue loudly in public don't just do it once in a while. They become that kind of person. And that label doesn't stay in the minds of strangers. It seeps into your own self-image. You start to see yourself as combative, quick-tempered, easily provoked. And once you've adopted that as part of your identity, it's much harder to change. Here's what's fascinating in almost every case. The person who stays calm in public, even when unfairly attacked, is perceived as the one with the higher ground. They may speak firmly, but they speak deliberately. Their composure forces others to meet them on their level. And that's the thing about self-control. It's contagious. Just as loud aggression invites chaos, a seat, calm confidence invites order. It's worth asking yourself the next time you feel that heat rising in your chest, what am I trying to win here? The argument, or the respect of everyone watching? Because you often can't win both. One is about being right in the moment. The other is about being right in the long run. The irony is that restraint doesn't weaken your position. It strengthens it. People don't remember the exact words you used in an argument, but they remember how you carried yourself. They remember whether you looked in control or out of control. And that memory will color every interaction they have with you in the future. So the real challenge is this: learn to stand your ground without raising your voice. Lower your tone instead of lifting it. Speak with weight, not volume. And if the situation is beyond salvaging, have the wisdom to walk away. Because sometimes the most powerful statement you make is the one you don't say at all. And maybe that's the truth you need to take with you. Every loud argument in public is an audition for how the world will see you. Decide right now what role you want to play. Let's move to something that's deceptively small but enormously telling: how you treat service workers in public. I say deceptively small because many people underestimate how revealing these interactions are. They think it's just about ordering coffee, checking into a hotel, or asking a waiter for extra napkins. But here's the reality. The way you treat someone who has no power over your life is one of the purest reflections of your character. And make no mistake, everyone is watching, not in the sense that strangers are keeping score, but because people pick up on patterns. They notice when someone's voice changes depending on who they're talking to. They notice if you smile at the CEO but dismiss the cleaner. They notice if your tone is warm to someone who can benefit you, but cold to someone who can't. These are the invisible threads by which people judge trustworthiness. Deserves a seat. They may not say it out loud, but they file it away. And that file comes back the next time they decide whether to trust you, follow you, or even want to be associated with you. On a psychological level, this behavior reveals your orientation toward hierarchy. If your respect is conditional, if it flows upward but never downward, it shows you're playing a status game, not a humanity game. And the problem with living in that framework is that you will inevitably find yourself at the bottom of someone else's hierarchy. When that day comes, the way you treated people beneath you will mirror right back at you. Life has a brutal symmetry like that. From a philosophical perspective, disrespect towards service workers is also a kind of self-betrayal, because to demean another human being publicly is to diminish your own moral stature. It's declaring, my momentary sense of superiority matters more than my long-term integrity. And integrity, once fractured, is hard to restore. The people around you may forgive a bad mood, but they rarely forget cruelty. We also have to address the fact that disrespect isn't always loud. It's not just shouting at a waiter or rolling your eyes at a cashier. Sometimes it's subtle, ignoring someone's greeting, talking over them, refusing eye contact, treating their time as less valuable than yours. These are small acts, but they accumulate into a larger truthing. They reveal whether you see people as individuals or as functions. And here's the fascinating thing. When you consistently treat people with respect, even in roles society undervalues, it has a compounding effect on your own psyche. It reinforces a self-image of fairness, humility, and emotional stability. Those qualities don't just make you pleasant to be around, they make you more effective in every sphere of life. Deserves a seat, because if you can keep your composure and empathy when dealing with someone who can't do anything for you, you've built a muscle that will serve you in high-stakes situations where the pressure is far greater. Now, I understand. Some people justify their behavior by saying, well, I expect good service, and if they don't give it, I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But this argument falls apart under scrutiny. You can hold people accountable without demeaning them. You can address poor service with directness, but without stripping someone of their dignity. That's the difference between a leader and a tyrant. One corrects behavior, the other attacks identity. And remember, the public setting changes the stakes. When you disrespect someone in a restaurant or a store, you're not just communicating to that individual. You're signaling to everyone around you the kind of person you are. Strangers will not know the full context, but they will make quick judgments, and those judgments stick. It's astonishing how many opportunities are lost, not because someone wasn't qualified, but because a silent observer once saw them treat someone badly in a moment they thought didn't matter. So the challenge is simple, but not easy. Make respect a default, not a reward. Great people. Look them in the eye. Say thank you like you mean it. Speak to the cleaner the same way you'd speak to the CEO. Not because it's good PR, but because it's good character. And character is a currency that never devalues. If you want to know who you really are, watch yourself in the smallest interactions. Because the truth is, it's not in public speeches or big achievements where your character is most visible. It's in the 5-second exchange with the person clearing your table. That's where the mask slips. That's where the truth shows. And that truth over time becomes the story the world tells about you. So remember this, respect given to those who cannot repay you is the purest form of power you'll ever hold. Use it well. One of the most dangerous habits I see in public behavior today is the tendency to treat shared spaces like personal confessionals, to speak so openly and loudly about the most private details of our lives that we forget where we are and who's listening. It happens on the train, in restaurants, at the gym. People sit down with a friend or pick up a phone call and, without lowering their voice, start broadcasting intimate details about their relationship, their finances, their family disputes. And here's the thing. They're not just sharing information. They're unconsciously giving away a piece of their power. The human mind is wired to judge. We all do it instantly, without even realizing it. When you overshare in public, you're handing strangers the raw material for judgments that may follow you far longer than you expect. You might think, these people don't know me, so it doesn't matter. But that's not entirely true. Reputation is not only what people you know think of you. It's also the impression you leave on those you don't. And in an age where everyone has a camera, where a few overheard sentences can be posted online, your private words can become public property in seconds. Psychologically, oversharing is often rooted in a deep need for validation. We spill our private struggles into public space because we want someone, anyone, to hear and affirm us. But the irony is that this kind of unfiltered disclosure rarely produces respect. More often, it creates a sense of unease in the listener. People instinctively respect those who guard their own boundaries because boundaries signal stability. If you can't control what you reveal, people will assume you can't control much else either. There's also a philosophical dimension to this. Privacy is not just about secrecy. It's about sovereignty. It's the ability to decide who gets access to your inner world and under what circumstances. When you casually give that access away to anyone within earshot, you're not exercising sovereignty. You're surrendering it. And surrendering your sovereignty in small ways, over time, trains your mind to treat it as something disposable rather than sacred. Consider this: every intimate detail you reveal in public creates a permanent mental image in the minds of those who hear it. You might be in a heated conversation and forget about it by tomorrow, but for someone who overheard that detail may be the only thing they know about you. If that detail is messy, chaotic, or desperate, that becomes your entire identity in their eyes. Is that really the version of yourself you want circulating in the world? Now, I'm not suggesting we all become emotionally closed-off robots. Human connection thrives on openness, vulnerability, and honesty. But there is a difference between intentional vulnerability and uncontrolled spilling. The first builds trust. The second erodes it. Vulnerability is most powerful when it's shared with the right people in the right setting. People who have earned the right to hear your truth. Public spaces rarely offer that kind of safety. We also can't ignore the practical dangers. You may think no one is paying attention, but criminals and manipulators thrive on overheard details. Talking openly about your income, your travel plans, your relationship issues in public gives strangers exactly the kind of leverage they can exploit. Sometimes protecting your privacy isn't just about dignity. It's about security. The discipline here is learning to pause before speaking. Ask yourself, if everyone in this room remembers exactly what I'm about to say, will I still be comfortable tomorrow? That single question can save you from exposing more than you intend, because once a detail leaves your mouth in public, it's no longer truly yours. When you withhold certain parts of yourself, you're not being cold. You're being strategic. You're creating a sense of mystery, and mystery is power. It draws people in rather than pushing them away. It ensures that what others know about you is intentional, not accidental. So the next time you feel tempted to spill your entire life into the open air, remember this: not everything inside you deserves an audience. Some truths are too valuable to be handled carelessly. Guard them, and you guard yourself. In the end, your privacy is not just a shield. It's a mirror of your self-respect. Treat it like treasure, and the world will treat you accordingly. Deserves to see one of the most underestimated ways we shape the impression we leave on others is through the way we conduct ourselves in the simplest, most ordinary moments, like eating a meal in public or maintaining basic hygiene. It sounds almost laughable to bring this up in a conversation about dignity, respect, and personal power. But here's the thing: the smallest habits often carry the loudest messages about who we are. Public spaces are shared spaces, and how you carry yourself in them signals your level of self-awareness. Something as seemingly trivial as chewing with your mouth open, leaving a mess behind, or neglecting basic cleanliness is never just a personal matter. It's a public broadcast. It says, without words, I don't care enough to consider how my presence affects the people around me. And that kind of message lingers in people's minds long after the actual moment has passed. Manners and hygiene are not arbitrary social rules invented to oppress individuality. They are part of the invisible framework that allows human beings to coexist without constant friction. When you respect those boundaries, you're not just following rules. You're acknowledging that other people exist and that their comfort matters as much as yours. That acknowledgement, in turn, earns you a quiet form of credibility. People may not applaud you for it, but they notice. And trust me, they also notice when you fail at it. There's also a deeper psychological truth here. How you treat public spaces is often a reflection of how you treat yourself. Someone who takes pride in their appearance, who keeps themselves clean and carries themselves with care, is sending a message not just to others, but to their own subconscious. I am worth maintaining. That internal message builds confidence. On the other hand, when you allow your habits to become sloppy in public, you're subtly telling yourself that your presence doesn't matter. Over time, that belief seeps into how you show up in every other area of life. From a philosophical perspective, this comes down to stewardship. You are, in a sense, a caretaker of the social environment you inhabit. Public settings, restaurants, parks, sidewalks, are not owned by you, yet they are temporarily yours to share. The way you treat them reflects your capacity to handle responsibility in bigger, more consequential domains. If you can't be trusted to manage the simple responsibility of keeping your table clean, everything deserves a seat. What does that say about how you'd handle greater responsibilities that involve actual human lives? And here's an uncomfortable truth. People make incredibly fast judgments based on these cues. They may not even realize it, but they're constantly scanning for signs of reliability, discipline, and respect. Poor manners and hygiene in public act like little warning lights. Subtle but powerful indicators that this is someone who cuts corners, who lacks discipline, who might not be dependable when it really counts. Now, I know the counter-argument. It's just food, or people shouldn't judge me for something so small. But life is judgment. Every human interaction is shaped by a constant exchange of signals, and those signals either raise or lower your perceived value in that interaction. You can resist that reality, or you can use it to your advantage by making sure the signals you send work in your favor. The solution is not perfection. It's mindfulness. It's being aware of the space you take up and the impact you have on the shared environment. It's recognizing that every public act is a small piece of your public identity. If you want to be perceived as someone with self-respect and discipline, then align your small actions with that image. And there's something even more profound at play here. The discipline you apply in public often strengthens the discipline you carry in private. If you can hold yourself to a standard when no one you know is watching, you'll naturally hold yourself to a higher standard when they are. That's integrity, consistency between the seen and the unseen parts of your life. So, take care of how you present yourself. Eat with intention. Keep yourself clean. Respect the table, the floor, the park bench, the train seat. These small acts may feel insignificant in isolation, but together they form a pattern, and patterns form reputations. Because in the end, the world doesn't just remember the big moments you orchestrate, it remembers the little moments you thought didn't matter. Carry yourself in public as if every act is a statement about who you are, because it is.